Welcome to Reframed. Join us as we explore the concept of redemptive business in our unique context on the African continent.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ziwani Reframed Risk podcast series for West Africa. My name is Chinwe. I'm a communications professional who has worked across various industries and sectors over the past 17 plus years. I have worked in financial services. I have worked in the fast-moving consumer goods, and I'm currently working in the development space. And this is always a very exciting conversation every time we have to do this in terms of talking about the concept and the word risk. And I believe that this is very important because there are different perceptions that we have come to see when it comes to the word risk and how people interpret and understand it. And it cuts across various parts of the continent. But for the purpose of this podcast, we're going to be zooming and honing in on reframing risk from the West African perspective. Our guest today is Yemi Faseun. He's a seasoned human resources executive who has almost 30 years of experience across various industries. I guarantee you this is going to be a very interesting and exciting conversation. He has worked across banking, telecommunication, management consulting sectors, and he's very passionate about everything that has to do with work and the people that do it. And he's also someone that actively mentors young people in building the right culture and showing up the right way at work. Yemi, it's wonderful to have you on this podcast today. I know I have attempted to introduce you. However, I'd like you to tell us a bit more about yourself and your journey so far.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chinwe. And it's really nice to be here. I am a Nigerian, an African, lived all my life in Nigeria, traveled a bit, yes, but growing up has been all about Nigeria, education, work experience as a 9-to-5er, now as HRpreneur, also focusing within the Nigerian ecosystem. So, studied English at the university level, Obafemi Awolowo University. We call it the premier university in Africa. Anybody can argue that. And then afterwards, I went to the University of Ilorin to do an MBA. Work experience, nobody should judge me on this one. I've been around a bit, 12, 13 organizations, if I include my work experience as a lecturer. I started in sales. I moved into direct marketing, then changed to HR, found love there, and I did HR straight 25 years. Before 4.5 years ago, I decided it was time to put all of this experience together and then start advising organizations from HR, leadership, talent management, culture perspective. Some organizations I've worked, let's say KPMG, Arthur Andersen then. Banking was Standard Chartered, Stanbic IBTC, FBN Quest. Telco was Etisalat and Glow. And then my FMCG experience took me to 7-Up Bottling Company. But beyond work, I love soccer. I support Arsenal. We are hoping and praying that we win the league this year. So I am following the run-in, the remaining 2-3 games to the end of the season. I'm following those games closely. And if you ask me, really, that's how I unwind. I just watch soccer. Any other thing is in the space of mentoring young people, speaking at conferences, and then the things. So I classify my current experience into 3 spaces. I say I am about purpose, passion, and people. So purpose for me will be the things that I do without necessarily getting paid for them, but I love doing them. I love to mentor young people. I love to speak to them or with them and engage with them at conferences and webinars. So for me, that would be the space of purpose. I'm just fulfilling my MAD agenda, which is making a difference. Passion for me will be the job that I do bringing me fees. So the things that I'm passionate about, HR, leadership, talent management, culture change, change management, and all that. And I achieved both by working with people. So you can see the 3 Ps: purpose, passion, and people.
I told our listeners that they're going to have a very wonderful time today. And I'm sure hearing your portfolio, now they understand what I mean. Before we start delving into a number of the things that you've already touched on while you were introducing yourself, I'll peg on the purpose, passion, and people. But I would like to ask you a question, a direct question, which I always typically like to start out with when it comes to risk. So, would you say that you are risk averse or you're a risk lover? And whichever one you say you are, why is it so? And how has it translated to your journey so far?
I'll give you 2 instances from my career journey, or maybe 3. So I was at Athlonison, now KPMG. As at that time, it was already in more than 30 countries globally. So there was a feeling of being a part of a global firm. You know what I mean? But by the time I was going to go on to the next job, I went from there to a company called Vic Lawrence and Associates. I bet you don't know the company. Somebody just mentioned to me that Mo Abudu, the founder of Vic Lawrence, was looking for someone to join her to expand the business. And believe me, I didn't think about it twice. I just saw an opportunity to be a part of something that was becoming bigger. So I left a safe space, so to speak, at Anderson, where nobody was pursuing me from a career perspective, and I went to join a small organization. That was one experience. Second experience, I left Standard Chartered. Again, a global bank. Every banker in Nigeria in the early 2000s wanted to join Standard Chartered. I was a resourcing manager, and after 4 years and 5 months, I was looking out, and I went to join an organization called PeopleTem. I promise you don't know PeopleTem. So that was another major risk that I took from a career perspective. And believe me, looking back, absolutely no regrets. Did I have all the answers from a risk management perspective that I was going to be successful or not in those 2 endeavors? I didn't. But I read a book while I was at the same Standard Chartered. First, break all the rules. What great managers do. So that influenced some of my risk appetite. Very early on in my career, I realized that I didn't want to groan and moan for 29 days and be happy on the 30th day because it was payday, when there are other opportunities around me where I could, one, add value, make impact, and then also, add value to myself. So risk for me was not something that was to be avoided. It was something that was to be approached, yes, with some level of mitigation, but we can't wait to get it right 100% before we move. And I'd rather take risks and fail and then learn than not take risk at all and then regret. So for me, risk is waking up every day, going on the road to work, coming back every day, whether you're in the train or the plane or whatever. It's a risky adventure itself. So life itself is a risk. That's how I say it. Will we or should we do things to mitigate? Yes. But are we always going to get 100% assurance that things will work? Absolutely no. So I'll say quickly that the reason many people wouldn't love to take risks or they're risk averse is because of the instances of failure. They've tried before, they failed, and therefore they want to be in a comfort place and all that. But that's not me. And finally, last example, as I left 9 to 5, it was a Friday. As at the time, I was still about 52, 53. I could easily have gone into another paid employment. But I said to myself, this is the time to go full blast into entrepreneurship, consulting. So left office on Friday, went to pack my things on a Sunday when everywhere was quiet and nobody was going to be asking me questions. I rested on Monday, and then on Tuesday, I said to myself, let's do it. I updated my profile on LinkedIn from Chief Corporate Services Officer at 7up Bonding Company to Chief Talent Officer at YF Talent Partners on a Tuesday, and I haven't looked back since that time.
it seems like you took an entrepreneurial approach to your career before you actually became an entrepreneur. How did this find expression? How did it work? Is that safe? Is that wise? If you were talking to people that are still on their own career journey, why did you take that approach? What are the things to look out for, and what were the lessons learned? And what's the best way to go about it for someone that chooses to be that daring or otherwise?
It's risky to say follow my path. I wouldn't say that. There is no one size fits all to life's career or business journey. There will always be what I call intervening variables that are unique to every individual. So I'm not going to say 100% take my template and run with it. No. But what I will say is this. Constant self-development is a must. For you to outgrow your current position, it is not time-based, it is value-based. So the more value you add to yourself in your current role, the more opportunities will be looking for you. You are not the one looking for the opportunities. What I forgot to tell you was that 10 out of my 12, 13 jobs were all referrals. The first two I applied on the pages of newspapers. The next 10 or 11, I promise you, they were all referrals from friends, from current bosses, from people I had worked with, from ex-colleagues and all of that. But people must see something in you from a value perspective before they can refer you for other opportunities. So whether you're going to do one job and grow on that job from graduate trainee to managing director, or you're going to do 12 jobs like me, or 6 or 7, and grow to the top of your career, whatever you want to do, just know that you must constantly outgrow your current capabilities and your current capacity. Otherwise, we will keep you in the role or in the job or in one organization for a long period of time, and you keep moaning and groaning. So you want to take advantage of opportunities within the ecosystem, constantly develop yourself. If you are not in love with self-development, you are cheating on yourself. That is what I would say. So it seemed as if, as I was growing in my career, opportunities were following my growth, sincerely. But what I see today, and I'm not categorizing generations, I'm not stereotyping, it is across generations. Many people think that time leads to promotion or time leads to opportunities. But I differ. What I say is that the value we put into time will determine how ready we are for other opportunities around or even within the same ecosystem where we are at the moment. Have a vision for your career journey. Understand that visioning itself is not enough. So take action. Taking action, or part of taking action, is constant self-development. Part of taking action is developing capabilities and also a solid network. I have been a beneficiary of quality networks. Another thing, one of the fundamentals is you've got to make sacrifices for the future you want to see. Nothing worthwhile comes easy. So you've got to make sacrifices. Anything worth your while will take something from you. So you've got to make sacrifices. Sacrifices of time to develop, sacrifices of time to grow, sacrifices when your friends may not see you for TGIF, Friday night out, and all that. I mean, there are seasons in life when those sacrifices must come. And whilst we're on the subject of risk, the next thing for me is that you must take risks. Fortune favors the brave. Growth comes with some level of risk. You must attempt new things. You must attempt new initiatives. You must be willing to be daring, so to speak, right? Because if you don't take risks, and then eventually you become a change victim. It's at this point that I will introduce 2 books into this conversation. 2 books that I read and changed the course of my career, especially from a risk management perspective. Number one book, Who Moved My Cheese? The cheese will always move. We will get to the cheese station one day and the cheese will no longer be there. But guess what? It's not because the cheese moved in a day, it's moved daily. It changes in size, it changes in color, it changes in texture. But if you're not managing risk very well and not understanding change management, you will get to the cheese station one day and the cheese will no longer be there. The second book is The Iceberg is Melting, right? So it's a book about penguins in a colony. And one day they just realized that, oh, the iceberg that served as a defense for their colony had melted. But guess what? It didn't melt in a day. It was a gradual process as well. But because they were not alive to environmental changes and they therefore were not managing risk about their territory effectively, they became susceptible to danger. So that for me are the things that I would recommend to anyone wherever they are in the course of their career journey. Have a vision for the future, take action leading you to that vision, make sacrifices, build solid networks, understand risk management, and then manage change. So manage your career. Don't stay employed. That is of now. Stay employable. That is of the future.
That's really fantastic. Something has come through consistently in everything you have said. In fact, in the last two questions you have answered, both your own entrepreneurial approach to your career and now actually being an entrepreneur. And now you are also saying that basically it's advisable to manage one's career as if it were a business. So in essence, entrepreneurship is not something you can escape, whether you are a career person or you're an actual entrepreneur. It's more about the mind state that you take towards what you are doing, whether it's a business or it's a job. And I love that part also of staying employable and not just necessarily being employed. So you said a lot also that seems to revolve very strongly around responsiveness to change. A few years ago, it was a common saying. We were saying that the world has changed so much in the last 10 years than it has in the last 100 years. And this was probably like 3, 4, 5 years ago. Right now, we don't even know how. I believe that change and that evolution is even happening faster than that analogy that was given at the time. However, is it possible that there could also be susceptibility to change fatigue? So is it about readiness for change, being willing to change, responding to change, being ahead of change? But do we also get to define the things that do not change, and then how much change really can happen and happen successfully in such a short time? And for you as an HR leadership and people professional, how does change fatigue come to play in all this, and how can it be managed while being responsive and agile?
In a world that is changing so fast, there will be individuals who will be lost in the change. And I come back to the place of preparation. The more ready we are for change, the better we are able to therefore respond, or the faster. And I have a kind of formula for that. I say that if the rate of change around is faster than the rate of change within, we will struggle. If things externally are changing faster than we can respond, or faster than we have prepared for it, we will struggle. But if the rate of change is happening within us, i.e., we are constantly in the place of change, if that rate is changing within us faster than the change happening externally, then we will thrive. And the last option for me is if the rate of change within is equal to the rate of change without, then at least we will survive. So what I'm saying is we cannot afford to be in a space where change outruns us or outpaces us. It sounds like a lot. It sounds like my mental health. This has changed again today. But the reality is that we don't have control over that rate of change. And you are right, we have seen tremendous change in the last maybe 6 years. Let me give you a very simple, basic example. We were used to interviews one-on-one. Conversations like this, we were used to having it in rooms where we'll be physically present. Ziwani will have put some money together to either invite you and I to the studio in South Africa so that we can have this conversation, or maybe somebody will come meet us in Nigeria. That was the order of the day at that time. But things have changed so fast. And try and imagine that you and I, Chinwe, we're having this conversation, but we are not ready to use the platform we are using right now. I'm not sure in what part of the world you are at the moment. Guess what? It could be anywhere. You could be in Australia as we speak. I could be in Soweto as we speak. You know what I mean? And are we having a conversation? Yes, we are. You will be surprised that candidates during interviews still struggle with Zoom. They struggle with Teams. I promise you. You know, I do interviews. You still tell candidates, oh, they've put on your video. You are muted, and they're struggling with it. That's because the rate of change externally is outpacing them. I just use that as a basic example. We can extend that conversation to more complex changes around us from a career and business perspective, right? I mean, let's talk about AI. Whether you like it or not, look at the conversation around artificial intelligence. In certain environments, entry-level roles have been taken over completely by AI agents. What does that mean? It means that individuals, therefore, who were thinking 3-4 years ago that they were going to start their consulting business and they're going to start from the base of the pyramid, that base has been completely wiped out now by technology. So they've got to do something else, learn something else, know something else in a way that allows them to add value to organizations or their ecosystem and therefore thrive. So we can't be fatigued at all from a readiness perspective. Change will always happen, whether we like it or not, and we don't have control over it. What we have control over is our state of readiness.
I'd like you to define what you mean by change from your own context and understanding, because we've been using the word loosely, assuming that it means the same thing to everyone being both of us on this conversation and also our listeners. But what does that word actually mean to you? And then you say we can't be fatigued, but do we get to balance? And how do we do that?
So change for me is anything within my immediate environment or outside my immediate environment that can impact my plans and my vision, my dreams, my objectives. Anything within my immediate environment or in the outer environment, external environment, that can change the course of things for me. That for me is change. So COVID was one. The war going on another. Let me come back from a career perspective. In some organizations, change is happening and some individuals are not aware until they lose their jobs. Restructuring of a particular department is happening gradually. We are letting go and not replacing people in that department. And that is because, we are thinking we want to shut down that department or that area of the business. Somebody who's environmentally aware already knows or has signals, so to speak, that something is happening and something is about to happen, and therefore start getting ready for other opportunities within the same environment or outside of that environment. So that is micro. And macro will be the examples that I gave. The COVID, now everybody's getting scared of hantavirus now. Should we be should we be worried or not? You know what I mean? Because that was exactly how COVID started in one remote area of the world before it spread. So changes anything in our personal lives as well. Changes when you have a new baby, first child at home. It will take some sleep away from you, either as a dad or as a mom. You know what I mean? Sometimes change happens suddenly, sometimes, but many times it actually gives us signal. The future advances gradually and gives us opportunities for preparedness or preparation. Most times we just ignore the signals, or we are too used to same old habits, same old ways of doing things. So when change now happens, you know what we want to do? Rather than do things differently, we want to do the same things harder. Don't try harder, try differently. But guess what? It is the individual who is in the space of readiness for change and space of preparation that is faster to respond positively to change.
What role does our faith play as Christians now? What's the role that our faith plays when it comes to anticipating, preparing for, and experiencing this change, which is also part of risk taking? Because I mean, this entire conversation is about and around reframing how we perceive and approach risk. So, what is the crucial role that you think that our faith as Christians and believers play when it comes to anticipating change, preparing for change, experiencing change, and even the outcomes we expect as a result of the changes that are happening around us, whether micro or macro?
You can't do it if you don't have faith. And there is something I'll need to read out to you. This is what I call my anchor. I want to read it to you verbatim. His love in time past forbids me to think he will leave me at last in trouble to sink. I'll say that again. His love in time past forbids me to think he will leave me at last in trouble to sink. That's 100% resting on faith based on experiences of the past, based on my experiences when I failed my secondary school exams, but God still made ways for me eventually to go through A levels and then the university. When I wanted to do an MBA as a vision and a dream for myself, and God making ways for me to find myself within the university environment. When I wanted to work with an organization like Arthur Anderson in 1987, but 12 years later, I found myself in the same organization through opportunities provided by God and by grace. So for me, it's 100%. No matter how we slice or dice it, and I talk about vision, action, managing change, taking risks and sacrifices, personally, for me, all of that is resting on grace. That is my position. Anything I've achieved, anywhere I've been, I always say that it's grace only.
We have talked extensively about your entrepreneurial approach to the career journey that you had for almost 30 years. Now let's talk about the actual entrepreneurship journey that you started, I think you said 4.5 years ago. Well, tell us about it. So how did that journey start? And where are you right now in terms of how you have been responding to the different experiences of change that has happened through the course of that journey?
So you're right, 4.5 years now as an entrepreneur. So by 2019, and this had nothing to do with COVID, by 2019, I started thinking about the future in a different way. And I was in an 8 to 5. I was at ABN Quest, the same place where we both worked. But I was already thinking about the future, what else I was going to do. So the first thing I did was to register a business name with the Corporate Affairs Commission of Nigeria. So I had a business name. I promise you, it took me a whole night to arrive at a name for the business. I wanted something that had value in it, value. I was looking for a Greek word to coin and make a business name. I checked all the Greek words. There were business names already registered. And then I moved to Latin. I moved to Hebrew. All night, I was checking. I'm not kidding. I just wanted something that had value. However, at some point, it just dropped in my heart that the ecosystem already knows you as YF. Everybody calls you YF. You know, it looks like it's moved from a name to a brand. Why don't you just make it your business? So the next morning, after going through an all-night vigil, so to speak, on getting a business name, I called my lawyer the next day and I said to her, let's register YF Talent Partners, right? And she went ahead. We did it. I was in 8 to 5, but this was me thinking ahead and then taking action. I was in 8 to 5. And then in 2020, early 2020, I came to the point where the work relationship wasn't getting pleasant anymore, right? And then early 2020, before COVID hit Nigeria, we parted ways, mutual separation. And since I had a business name, I just made that transition quickly. And it wasn't bad. People were engaging with me. People were calling me for speaking gigs and training for about 3 months. A friend of mine gave me his office to use, so I didn't have to pay rent. He gave me opportunities and all that. And then Glo called me via LinkedIn. COVID had happened, so there was uncertainty around me, I must tell you, how I was going to succeed as an entrepreneur in a COVID year. I guess the opportunity for me was two things. Number one, God gave me that opportunity to do a dry run for my business journey in 3 months. And then, just as he kept the children of Israel in Goshen during the period of darkness, during the moment of COVID, God kept me at Glo for another 8 to 5 role. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't great an experience. I spent 1 year, 10 days before the 7-Up opportunity came. But because I had done the 3 months and I saw that it wasn't bad at all, I was now focusing more on the future. So when the conversation or the employment at 7-Up ended, because of the dry run of 2020, February to about May, I decided, going by those two things that I read out to you, I decided it was time. It was an absolutely faith-based decision. However, can I say this? In my readiness journey, for 6 or 7 years, no, for 7 or 8 years, I was speaking at events, conferences, webinars, and some trainings in organizations, and I wasn't charging anybody a fee because I was in an 8 to 5 environment. I was doing it for me, from an impact perspective, from building other people, adding value to the ecosystem. That was what I thought I was doing. With the benefit of hindsight, it now became obvious to me that God used that opportunity for me to build goodwill and social capital within the ecosystem. Because in those 7, 8 years, the brand name YF became very, very known in the market. I mean, honestly, I'm not kidding you. Every weekend was an opportunity for me to speak at one engagement or another. And I wasn't tired. I was happy. This for me was from a purpose perspective. I didn't know it was going to lead to passion. So the things that I've done over the years, building other people, encouraging other people, making a difference, they've come back to me now from a business perspective, and they've yielded dividends for me.
It's really interesting. On a lighter note, when you're talking about how you started your consulting business and how you had to come up with a name in 2020, while you were speaking to that part, I'm like, really? You spend all night, you research Greek, Hebrew, Latin, everything, and you land on your name, like your initials,
Absolutely,
really?
absolutely, absolutely.
That's actually quite hilarious. I'm like, you literally have an entire sleepless night and you land on your own name, your initials is being right there in front of you.
Honestly,
But
honestly.
I'd like you to explain something. How has the journey been in the last 4 years? What does your client base look like? How have you grown your client base? I know you spoke to competence, skill, capacity, network that you add value to, but now practically bringing it down to YF Consulting. What's your current client base like, and how have you grown that over the past 4 years? And how did you achieve that?
While I was still in 805, because of my speaking gigs, they were becoming a lot. I think it got into my head one day, and in the year 2019, I started jotting and counting the number of speaking engagements. By end of 2019, I've spoken at 54 events, free of charge. But something whispered to me that you remember that God was upset with a king who did a census for the children of Israel. Why am I counting? It was tending towards pride. So in 2020, I didn't count. I'm sure I did more. Again, it played out. I think it was in my second year or third year. 4.5 years down. This was end of 2024. I counted the number of organizations I had worked with, speaking, consulting, training across different topics, and I counted 74. Just within a space of 2 years, I counted 74 organizations, 74 brands that have listened to me or engaged with me. Again, in end of 2020, by 2025, I wanted to do it. Something said to me, don't do it. So I didn't do it. I'm sure if I go back to count, I would have engaged with over 100 organizations in 4.5 years. So my client base is everywhere. One-man businesses, SMEs, and then the multinationals. The company that gave me my big break initially was Nigerian Breweries. I got a gig to train 530 managers across 5 locations in Nigeria over a 3-month period. And we have done more work with Nigerian breweries after then. I've done work with FMCG. I've done work with many banks. I've done work with oil and gas. I'm still engaging with a bank, a mortgage bank that is transiting or transforming to become a commercial bank now. It's been a 2-year project with them, and they've just asked us for another year to be with them. So in a nutshell, God has been good, absolutely good.
It seems like the bulk of your business comes from returning clients and also referrals from clients. And that could automatically speak to the quality and the consistency of the experiences that they have been getting every time they tend to engage. So that's also the part that we get to play in terms of the quality of execution and how we engage and how our stakeholders experience us. I have one more question for you before we get to wrap this up. What has been the consistent themes that you have been coming across when you engage in these boardrooms and in these leadership sessions? What are the consistent themes that have come out or that tend to come through when it comes to risk-taking, change, response to change, and more importantly, continuity, which you also mentioned earlier in terms of planning, preparing, and being sustainable for the future?
I'll probably say 3 things I've consistently showed up in the last 4 years or so. Number one is the fact that there is a dearth of talent globally, and organizations need to pay more attention to passing the baton to the next level. There has to be a deliberate attempt to do that. You want to call it talent management, you want to call it succession planning, you want to call it building the pipeline, whatever it is. There's a new attraction in town, which is to buy talent, buy ready-made talent. Everybody just wants a talent that's going to hit the ground running, start work, deliver for me, get paid, and all of that. But organizations need to go back to the drawing board. And this is not just about a company or a country. I'm speaking from a global perspective because the global talent pool is shrinking. So rather than moaning and groaning about it, I think organizations need to be more deliberate about building talent pools for companies and for countries. We've got to work more on the next layer, the next level. Because after another 5 or 10 years, the guys who are running businesses today are not going to be there anymore. And if we don't, therefore, take conscious effort to build the next generation of leaders, we will have issues. We will have more issues, so to speak. I also have noticed that many young people, millennials and now Gen Z, they are founders and co-founders of businesses. And they're doing extremely well. However, remember that they jumped straight from classroom to boardroom. No leadership experiences in any way. They only know how to do raise funds, modeling, financial modeling. And once they've raised funds, the next thing is scale, scale, scale. I'll say that our founders, our young founders, our co-founders should please find time to go through leadership tutelage. There's a difference between raising funds and raising people. Totally different things. So we need to go back to the drawing board of raising people who will sustain the legacies of the businesses we are building. Because if we are focusing only on scaling and making money and paying money back to our investors, we may end up one day to realize that the people we did not raise will be the ones who will sell the business that we raised. So scaling the business, but also please scaling the people. And that is talking about leadership. And I'm not saying they should come to YF Talent Partners. I'm saying however they want to do it, they should plug their leadership gaps. There are so many instances of people not living up to leadership expectations. Now, let me come back to organizations that are structured and well established. I've also seen that the path to managerial positions and leadership positions has strictly and largely been around technical competencies. We are constantly promoting people into leadership positions without getting them ready for leadership responsibilities. If we need to do it well, we should first get them ready for leadership responsibilities before promoting them into leadership positions. So managing KPIs and scorecards is not the same thing as managing a team to achieve KPIs and scorecards. So we need to do a lot around that in terms of leadership development. What else do I see? I see a multi-generational workforce where we are labeling and stereotyping rather than finding synergy within the generations. So one generation is calling another lazy, entitled, want to succeed in a hurry, impatient, and all that. And the other generation is saying old school, old-fashioned, digitally lazy, dinosaurs, ancestors, and all that. My view is that no generation is better than another. Every generation brings something unique to the proverbial table. So organizations need to work harder. Leadership boards need to work harder to find synergies across multi-generational workplaces. What else? Emotional intelligence. People need to realize that I am not the most important person in every conversation in the organization. I am part of a puzzle. I fit and others fit. We should move away from me, myself, and I into a conversation of the teams, of the organization, of the department. And what will help us to do that is a good dose of emotional intelligence. What I've also found out is that young people are not socially connected anymore. They are digitally connected, but socially disconnected. I did say in one of my interviews sometime last year, and I was dragged on TikTok and other social media platforms, I did say that if I could regulate, I would say that individuals with 0 to 5 years experience should not be given opportunities to work remotely or hybrid. They should go back to the offices because we don't know how to relate anymore. They don't know how to relate with peers. They don't know how to relate with bosses. They don't know how to relate with CEOs. And these are guys who want to become CEOs, right? So those are the kind of conversations that I have constantly had with leadership teams and even with board members around how to change the narrative of productivity in workplaces. A lot is happening. I must tell you, productivity is on the decline. Quiet quitting is on the increase. Um, Global opportunities exist for people. If you don't manage and appreciate your talent, they will leave you and all of that. So we need to have new conversations around the now of work so that we are better positioned to manage talent and therefore find the best fit of resources, people, finances, technology, process systems, and culture for our organization. And all of that brought together will give organizations what I call, or what we all call, competitive advantages. That would be my take on that question.
Thank you, Yemi. You've said a lot. Buying talent versus building talent, intentional growth, funding, raising funds versus raising people, synergy across different generations, focusing on both leadership beyond technical competencies, and then culture. The culture part, I always like to say that AI cannot read the room. Like you said, it's easy to raise funds, but you need people to manage whatever resources to be able to take that organization to optimal performance and next level, preferably next generation or legacy. So this has been a very, very insightful, exciting, and engaging conversation. And I hope that our listeners have also been having a great time so far. So parting words.
Whether you're in career or you're in business or you're working towards business, don't rush the process. Pace yourself. Grow organically. There is absolute value in delayed gratification. Grow into the size of your dreams. For those who are waiting for opportunities, don't just wait. While you're in the waiting room, don't stop growing. Your dreams are valid. External realities will not invalidate your dreams. Keep the dream, keep the value, and it's always a matter of time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Yemi. It was lovely having you on this podcast. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you for spending this time with us. We hope and believe it's been worth your while as we continue to have these conversations on reframing risk, specifically from the West African perspective. And of course, thank you to Ziwani and to the entire team for making this possible. And we look forward to speaking again or connecting with you again on our next episode. Thank you and bye for now.
Thank you for joining us. This episode of Reframed was brought to you by Ziwani, a community of business leaders who partnered together to live out their kingdom calling in the marketplace within Africa. To know more about us, visit our website at ziwani.com. That's ziwani.com.